It was an unusually cold spring morning in Washington, D.C. when Denzel Washington stepped out of his black Escalade, his eyes hidden behind tinted aviators, his presence as commanding as ever. Although the Oscar-winning actor was known for keeping his political thoughts close to the vest, his recent involvement in a bipartisan veterans initiative had quietly drawn him into the political arena. But nothing could have prepared him for the envelope that awaited him at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, slipped under a bench during one of his charity events. The envelope was unmarked, but its contents were anything but ordinary. Inside, there were black and white photocopies of government documents, heavily redacted, except for a few clear lines. One line in particular made his breath catch: transfer of campaign funds to offshore account linked to Representative Jasmine Crockett. See Cayman Ledger Entry Ref. JC 904. Denzel wasn't just an actor. He had grown into a quiet statesman, a man of deep spiritual values and fierce loyalty to justice. This wasn't just another Hollywood scandal or partisan smear. This was federal-level corruption, and it had a name. A prominent name. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas had become a rising star in the House. Her fiery speeches and relentless criticisms of President Donald Trump made her a darling of the liberal media. She was, in the eyes of many, the embodiment of progressive resistance. But these documents told a different story, one of backdoor deals, money laundering, and something even darker, betrayal of the very constituents who had entrusted her. Denzel didn't take this lightly. He consulted with his longtime friend and retired Marine Corps Colonel Marcus Jennings, who had worked in intelligence. Together, they confirmed the document's watermark was authentic. The implications were immense. If this got out, it wouldn't just tarnish Crockett's reputation. It could collapse her entire political career and potentially spark investigations into others connected with her inner circle. But Denzel didn't go to the media. Not yet. Instead, he went to someone who he believed would know what to do: Pam Bondi, the current U.S. Attorney General under President Donald Trump. Pam received Denzel in a private meeting inside the DOJ, her eyes scanning the documents with cold precision. "If this is real," she said, her voice low, "this could blow a hole in the Democratic establishment bigger than anything we've seen in a decade. But we'll need to move quietly. If she catches wind of this, she'll start covering her tracks." Denzel leaned back in his chair. "I'm not doing this for Trump. I'm doing it for the truth. If she's clean, great. But if she's dirty? The American people deserve to know." Pam nodded. "You just made yourself a target, Denzel." He smiled, calm and collected. "I've been a target before." By the end of that week, a discreet task force had been assigned to the matter, composed of forensic accountants, tech analysts, and former federal investigators. Their mission: follow the money, confirm the trail, and determine whether Jasmine Crockett had truly engaged in illegal financial activities, and if so, who else might be involved. Meanwhile, in Capitol Hill, Representative Crockett was preparing for a high-profile television interview with MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, unaware that the foundation beneath her was about to crack. Denzel knew this wouldn't just be a story about corruption. This would become a story about redemption, accountability, and truth, one that would shake the American political system to its core. But what he didn't know yet was that Jasmine Crockett wasn't acting alone. And the deeper he dug, the more dangerous the truth would become. The sound of camera flashes echoed in the hallways of Capitol Hill as Jasmine Crockett strode confidently through the rotunda, her aides surrounding her like satellites orbiting a star. She was scheduled to appear on MSNBC that evening to discuss the failures of the Trump administration, a segment she had rehearsed meticulously. What she didn't know was that across town, a team of federal agents was combing through her financial records digit by digit. In a nondescript basement office of the Justice Department, Marcus Jennings paced behind the analysts' desks. The digital forensic team had found a disturbing pattern: offshore wire transfers routed through 3 shell corporations based in the British Virgin Islands. One of those corporations, Solstice Holdings Limited, was registered under an alias previously used by a lobbyist named Damon Truxell, an old Democratic operative known for laundering dark money during the Obama years. "Denzel, look at this," Marcus said, pointing at the screen during a secured call. "Not only is Crockett receiving funds indirectly through this alias, but Truxell also shows up on the guest list for 2 of her closed-door donor retreats in Napa and Aspen." Denzel exhaled slowly. So this isn't just campaign misuse, it's influence peddling. And then came the second bombshell. In one of the subpoenaed emails, Crockett's chief of staff wrote to an unnamed party, "The package has been secured. JC will ensure favorable legislative scheduling for the EV waiver if contributions are wired before May 12th. That email had a metadata tag originating from Crockett's private server, one not listed in official congressional documentation. That alone was a violation of ethics and possibly federal law. But the context of the message hinted at something far more sinister: policy for profit. Back at the Capitol, Jasmine took her place on the MSNBC set. Under the lights, she exuded charisma, poise, and an effortless command of progressive talking points. Representative Crockett, Rachel Maddow began, "How do you see your role in protecting democracy in the era of Donald Trump?" Jasmine smiled smoothly. "We are the resistance. We are the firewall between authoritarianism and the American dream." Behind the scenes, a DOJ analyst watching the live broadcast shook his head. "She's lying through her teeth," he muttered. Denzel, watching from his hotel room, remained quiet. He had dealt with villains on-screen for decades. Now he was face-to-face with one off-screen. But he wasn't ready to make his move. Not yet. President Donald Trump leaned back in the Oval Office as Pam Bondi laid the manila file on his desk. She didn't mince words. "Mr. President, this could be a gift from heaven. Crockett's caught in a corruption trap. And we've got Denzel Washington, of all people, bringing the intel." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Denzel? The actor? Isn't he one of them Hollywood types?" Pam shook her head. "Not anymore. Not for this. He's clean, thorough, and he wants justice." The president cracked a grin. "Maybe I should offer him a cabinet job. Secretary of Truth." They both chuckled, but the mood was tense. This wasn't about partisanship anymore. This was about trust in the system. Trump nodded. "Give him whatever support he needs." Quietly. "We'll let the hammer fall when the time is right." As days passed, Jasmine Crockett began to sense that something was wrong. Reporters were becoming colder, less enthusiastic. One Hill journalist from the Hill suddenly canceled a scheduled profile interview without explanation. Her donors, once reliably responsive, started dodging calls. Then one night, she received a simple text from an unknown number. "They know." She froze. Her hands trembled as she typed back, "Who?" No response. She felt her stomach twist. Something big was coming. She didn't know how or from where, but the walls were closing in. The tension in Jasmine Crockett's Capitol Hill office was as thick as the velvet drapes drawn across her windows. For the first time in months, she canceled her press appearances and declined floor interviews. Her staff, usually buzzing with high-energy millennials tweeting progressive slogans, now walked on eggshells, whispering behind closed doors, but none of them knew just how close she was to the edge. She had received another encrypted message that morning, this time with an audio file. The voice was unmistakable. It was her own, recorded during a donor retreat in Napa last fall. "The EV waiver will pass. I'll make sure of it. But I expect your PAC to make good on your part. No games, Frank." It was damning. She remembered the moment. She hadn't thought much of it then. Everyone blurred lines in politics. Quid pro quo wasn't new. But now someone had the tape. Someone who wasn't playing by the usual rules of protection and secrecy. Denzel Washington sat across from Marcus Jennings inside a discreet coffee shop just outside Arlington, Virginia. The two had been keeping everything under wraps. Even the media hadn't caught wind of the sting operation in motion. It wasn't time yet. But the net was tightening. "The plan is simple," Marcus said. "We send a message through one of her known contacts, someone we flipped. A supposed donor with a new deal. We wire the meeting. If she bites, she's finished." Denzel nodded. "And if she doesn't? She'll still panic. That's when people make mistakes." The bait was a man named Raymond Bexler, a Silicon Valley venture capitalist who had donated to Crockett's campaign in 2022. What she didn't know was that Bexler had since been indicted on unrelated securities fraud charges and agreed to cooperate to avoid prison time. The setup took place in an upscale DC restaurant. Crockett arrived in a dark coat and oversized sunglasses, seated at a back booth near a wall of soundproof paneling. Bexler leaned in with a friendly grin. "So, Jasmine, I've got a green energy startup looking to push a bill through Congress, some regulatory red tape. If you can help smooth it, there's a bonus in it for you." She didn't blink. "How much are we talking?" "7 figures. Quiet. No paper trail." There it was. She sipped her wine, then whispered, "Send the details to my assistant. I'll make sure the subcommittee never hears a peep." What she didn't know was that the velvet cushion under her seat had a built-in recording mic. And behind a false panel in the wine cellar, 2 DOJ agents and Marcus Jennings were listening in real time. The trap had been sprung. Caroline Leavitt, the current White House press secretary under President Donald Trump, was prepping for a major press conference. The room buzzed with journalists sensing a seismic announcement. Caroline adjusted her blazer, checked her notes, and gave a nod to the sound tech. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. Good afternoon. This administration is committed to rooting out corruption, no matter where it hides. I can confirm that the Department of Justice has opened a criminal inquiry into Representative Jasmine Crockett regarding a series of financial irregularities and potential bribery. Gasps rippled through the press corps. Caroline continued. The tip that began this inquiry came from a civilian source outside the political establishment. That individual has been working closely with our investigators to expose a pattern of unethical conduct that may extend beyond one member of Congress. Though she never mentioned his name, Denzel Washington watched the conference from his suite with quiet resolve. He hadn't done this for attention. He'd done it because someone needed to. Someone with no strings to pull, no favors to ask, no career to protect. Panic had spread like wildfire. Jasmine Crockett's office locked down, her chief of staff resigned, and aides were seen shredding documents and wiping devices. CNN and Fox News had both gone to breaking coverage. Even MSNBC, her former safe haven, had launched a panel to discuss the potential fallout. Denzel's actions had sent shockwaves through Washington. But it wasn't over yet. Because as investigators peeled back the layers, they found one name consistently popping up in emails and ledger entries. Someone even more powerful, someone who might have pulled Jasmine's strings from the start. And that name had a seat in the United States Senate. The spotlight shifted quickly to the United States Senate as whispers of a shadowy figure behind Jasmine Crockett's downfall rippled through Washington. The name that kept resurfacing in the investigation was Senator Richard Harlan, a veteran Republican known for his iron grip on Texas politics and his uncanny ability to survive scandals unscathed. Denzel Washington, sitting in a quiet corner of a downtown D.C. restaurant, watched the news crawl across the television screen. Senator Harlan was a political juggernaut, a man whose public image was near flawless and whose influence extended well beyond state borders. He had cultivated a bipartisan reputation as a deal-maker, often praised for his pragmatic approach to legislation. But the evidence suggested otherwise. The DOJ task force uncovered encrypted emails linking Harlan's office directly to the offshore accounts tied to Crockett. Harlan's fingerprints were all over the financial maze, suggesting he was the real puppeteer manipulating Crockett to pass legislation beneficial to his corporate backers. Marcus Jennings leaned in, the weight of the discovery heavy in his voice. If we expose this, it'll shake the Senate to its core. Harlan's been a kingmaker for decades. Denzel nodded gravely. That means the pushback will be fierce. Senator Harlan sat behind his mahogany desk in a Capitol office adorned with Texan memorabilia. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from journalists, political operatives, and nervous senators. He knew the moment of reckoning was near. He called his closest aide, Meredith Collins. Get ahead of this. Leak something to the press. Anything to muddy the waters. Meredith nodded. What about Crockett? She's expendable. Let her burn. We'll protect the Senate. Harlan's plan was to sacrifice Crockett as the fall girl while he quietly distanced himself from the scandal. Back in Texas, Jasmine Crockett was reeling. Her constituents, once fiercely loyal, had turned cold. She faced a barrage of questions at a hastily arranged town hall meeting in Dallas. Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. I have always served with integrity, she insisted. But I understand the concerns, and I welcome a full investigation. If I've made mistakes, I will accept the consequences. Behind the scenes, however, she was scrambling to assemble a legal team and craft a strategy for survival. At the White House, President Donald Trump watched the situation unfold with a calculating eye. The scandal was an unexpected boon for the administration. Trump, always ready to capitalize on the missteps of his political opponents, instructed Pam Bondi to ensure the investigation remained highly publicized. Let the Democrats eat their own, Trump remarked with a smirk. This will help us in the midterms. Pam Bondi agreed, but reminded the president, we have to be careful. If Harlan gets implicated, we're playing with fire. Trump leaned forward. Then we'll play it slow. Let the pressure build until they crack. Meanwhile, Denzel Washington prepared to take his next step. The actor-turned-activist understood that revealing Crockett's secret deal was only the beginning. To bring justice, the system itself had to be exposed. its deep corruption and the web of deceit spanning powerful figures like Senator Harlan. With Marcus Jennings and the DOJ task force at his side, Denzel arranged for an explosive exposé. They planned to release a trove of documents and audio evidence that could not be ignored. But as the pieces came together, Denzel received an ominous message on his phone. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." The warning was clear. The air in Washington had thickened with tension as Denzel Washington prepared to go public with the evidence that would dismantle not just Jasmine Crockett's career, but possibly bring down one of the most powerful senators in the country. His press conference was scheduled in a small auditorium at the National Press Club, packed with reporters, cameras, and politicians desperate to hear the truth. Denzel looked out over the sea of faces, some eager, some hostile. He adjusted the microphone and began, "Thank you all for coming. Today, we expose not just corruption in a single office, but a culture of influence peddling that threatens the very foundation of our democracy. What I am about to share is the result of months of investigation with the Department of Justice." He paused for a moment before continuing. Representative Jasmine Crockett accepted illegal contributions in exchange for legislative favors, but she was not acting alone. Behind her was Senator Richard Harlan, who orchestrated these deals to benefit corporate interests over the American people. As he laid out the evidence, emails, recordings, and financial trails, the room buzzed with shock. Questions flew. Reporters demanded answers. The cameras zoomed in on Crockett's resigned face, shown live on the large screens. The bombshell dropped like a thunderclap. Senator Harlan, once untouchable, was called to testify before the Ethics Committee. His allies abandoned him, fearful of the growing backlash. Harlan's attempts to deny the charges crumbled as more witnesses came forward. Jasmine Crockett, now under indictment, issued a public apology. "I made grievous errors," she said tearfully. "I hope my mistakes will serve as a lesson for all who serve the public trust." At the White House, President Trump addressed the nation. "In these times, we must stand strong against corruption, no matter where it comes from. Our administration will continue to support those who seek truth and justice. Together, we will make America great again, by cleaning house and restoring faith in our government." Denzel Washington's role in the scandal elevated him beyond Hollywood. He became a symbol of integrity and courage, showing the nation that no one was above the law. Yet, the warnings he received were a stark reminder that fighting corruption was dangerous. When asked if he feared retaliation, Denzel replied, "Justice is worth the risk. This is bigger than any one person. It's about the future of America." The fallout changed Washington forever. Jasmine Crockett's political career lay in ruins. Senator Harlan faced criminal charges, and the Senate began a reckoning that reshaped the balance of power. The Trump administration used the scandal to rally support, promising more transparency. For Denzel, the experience was transformative. He returned to his acting career but never stopped advocating for accountability and ethics in government.